I was born in Galloway. I was reared in Galloway. We'll arocht for Galloway, and it's there I'll dio.
So North Galloway, Scotland's most southerly point, is perched on a kind of vertiginous cliff-top setting around 260 feet high, and down below the Foghorn at the mall, there is a place called Carrick-Cartland Point, which connects with a rocky outcrop and a legend of witches. Now, if you look down there about 90 minutes after the low tide, you'll see a very strange and turbulent phenomenon known as the nine tides, where the conflicting opposite tides come together, and it's really quite an awesome sight to see. The story behind it, however, comes from the times of witchcraft and stories of witchcraft, when people were thought to have magical powers to cast over the waves. And 9 women had come together to try and stop passengers of a ship getting to the land. But unfortunately, they've been unable to lift the spell afterwards, hence the reason the tides are still so violent at times. But there is another tale that the witches cast a spell over a witchfinder and the boat that she was travelling on from Ireland to stop him from coming to these parts. And of course, the conclusion is up to you.
I was reared in Galloway. We'll arocht for Galloway, and it's there I'll dio.
There's some wonderful old tales and traditions in the Inns of Galloway concerning cliff arches, which were thought to be unnatural at one time and therefore created by the devil himself. And there is one particular arch close to Port Logan that juts out of the cliff and down into the sea, and this is thought to be the Devil's Bridge. And from certain angles, if you look at the arch, it is said that you can actually see the devil's face peering out of the rope.
I was born in Galloway. I was reared in Galloway. We'll arocht for Galloway, and it's there I'll dio.
There are many tales and legends of ghostly ships in these parts, particularly around the Solway, and one of the earliest recorded was by Alan Cunningham back in the 1820s, and he refers to a time when he and his friend Richard Folder of Allenby in Cumberland got together and they went out for a sail, and the sea was particularly calm, gently drifting them towards the Scottish coast. When they arrived on the beach, they looked up to see an old man making his way down the shore. He was accompanied by a young girl, his granddaughter, Barbara. She was carrying a small harpoon and had the most brilliant blue eyes. Richard began to speak in hushed tones to Alan. He said that this was old Mark McMoran, and he had an intimate knowledge of the caves and inlets. In fact, there were some stories that Mark had even sailed on the ghostly ships that would be seen in and around the bay. Alan detected a note of fear in Richard's voice. The two of them looked out to sea, and half submerged within the quicksand were 2 very blackened hulls of ships that caught the men's eyes. Not long after this, a young fisherman in a boat began to make his way towards these hulls, and as he got closer, it appeared that he was getting into some sort of difficulty. Both Alan and Richard were very quick to act and began to swim out to the scene to help the stricken sailor. But it was to no avail. The poor man was lost. When they returned to the shore, dripping wet, we sat together with old Mark McMoran, and he said, anyone who comes into contact with the hulls of those ships is a dead man. and they were quite stunned by everything that had happened in the previous few moments. Mark went on to tell the story. Apparently, many years ago, Danish pirates had come to the area, and there were farmers out working in the fields by moonlight who glanced out to sea, and they could make out the silhouettes of these ships coming towards what was quite a dangerous place, known for its currents and its quicksands. They hollered at the tops of their voices to try and alert the men to steer clear and to get into a more safe area. But unfortunately, they couldn't hear a thing. Then four rather enterprising youths, if you can call them that, decided they were going to try and profit from the disaster. They got into a small boat and started to row out to the two ships. It was described as a shadowy pilot came to meet them halfway. And the four boys were heard laughing and joking as they jumped into the ship, into the boat. And then they made their way towards the ship where there was a whole group, the whole crew of sailors laughing and joking, full of mirth and merriment. And the boys were laughing too. And then they were handed goblets of wine which they lifted to their mouths. And just as they did so, their laughter turned to horrifying shrieks as the ship melted away beneath their feet and they were drowned in the waters below. Now, the story goes that if you stand at Boring Point near Kirkbean on a certain night of the year and you look out towards the sea, you might just see those two ships returning once again, and you'll see the boat making its way out and the laughter which turned so horribly to shrieks all those years ago. The boys were thought to have been buried in the local kirkyard, a memorial standing to remember them.
I was born in Galloway, I was reared in Galloway, we'll ocht for Galloway, and it's there I'll die.
So in the Rings of Galloway, close to Carswell Lighthouse, there is an old tradition of a huge towering giant that is said to have been buried around that spot. Now in the mid-1800s, there was a man out searching for treasure, digging away in the ground, when all of a sudden he took fright, completely out of the blue. Surprised by what had just happened, he started to run and fell, breaking his arm. Round about that spot, a short time later, they uncovered a burial area full of bones. Now, does this give a wee bit more credibility to the legend of the giant?
I was born in Galloway, I was reared in Galloway.
Criffle's not a particularly tall hill at just under 2,000 feet, but the way that it rises up steeply, looking over the Solway and the Niff estuary, gives the kind of illusion both of a greater height. And there's some interesting folklore connected to Criffle. And one story goes that the celebrated wizard Michael Scott had set a task for the devil. Now, you've maybe heard the saying that the devil makes work for idle hands. In this case, the wizard was making work for the devil, and he was required to carry large rocks across the water in his basket. And he had a road to do over on this side of the Solway, but as he approached, the basket, or the creel, broke as he was flying over the Niff. And all of the rocks fell down, creating Criffle or Creel Fell, which is one story behind it. But there might be some truth to it, because back in the days of the marches, when balefires would be lit up on the hills to warn of English marauders, it might be feasible to look upon Criffle and see fires blazing atop it, which may give an impression of one of Satan's mountains ablaze. Now, one of my favourite stories about Criffel concerns the diamond. The legend is a large, shimmering diamond that is generally seen by ships out of boats out at sea from distance. But whenever they come closer to the hill and investigate in close quarters, they are unable to find it. It's very, very elusive. And I suppose if you consider the perspective of just how large that diamond would need to be seen at sea, you know, it gives a sense of how maybe unreal it actually is. But the story behind it is supposed to concern the granite that you would find up on Criffel, and the moon shining on the granite, creating that sort of glittering diamond-like effect, or snowy streamlets that are illuminated by the moonlight, which again in itself is just absolutely beautiful. So it may not be a diamond, but you can see how these stories have come to light.
I was born in Galloway. I was reared in Galloway. We'll ocht for Galloway, and it's there I'll dio. I was born in Galloway. I was reared in Galloway. We'll ocht for Galloway, and it's there